Hey, it's Mike here. If you were ever to see my car, you would know I am not exactly Mr. Punctual about things like maintenance. I will forget about an oil change until that blinking light reminds me. So I guess Car Care to Go is designed for folks like me, and I suspect it's designed for a lot of the folks who listen to our show too. You make an appointment, they show up, pick up your ride, and bring it back a few hours later with the oil changed, the wipers replaced, and the seats tidied. They are accessible all over DC. Instead of sitting in a waiting room drinking bad coffee, why not sit at home and drink your own coffee while they do the work? Get your first synthetic oil change for just $20.23. Get it? That's 2023 with the code FIRST20. No catch. Any make or model. Sign up at carcaretogo.com.
Today on CityCast DC. So I've always felt lucky to live in DC, a city with actual seasons. Summer in DC is so fun, but it's also so hot and so muggy. And as beautiful as springtime is right now, if you're anything like me, it also means dealing with DC's dreaded seasonal allergies. So what season here is best? My CityCast co-host Mike Schaefer and I make the case for our favorites. Today is Wednesday, April 19th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC's talking about.
All right, hey, Bridget, happy spring.
Happy spring, Michael. Are you doing lots of fun springtime activities?
I mean, I'm trying to get more steps, but that's like a seasonally agnostic activity, but it means I'm walking around a lot, and DC is mighty pretty in the spring. There's all these flowering, incredibly colorful trees that I see. I live in Upper Northwest. I like to hit the alleys because there's a lot of trees in backyards that you can see.
Excuse me.
And there's the downside of spring.
Yes, I know we're talking about the best seasons in DC, and I could never say spring because I have terrible seasonal allergies. I feel like they're worse this season. I know there's nothing less interesting than someone telling you about their seasonal allergies, but it's something I spend a lot of my time talking about, thinking about, consulting experts about, reading about. It takes up a lot of my springtime time.
And look, Bridget, the key to your and my debates on CityCast is applying rigorous, fake scientific logic to matters of personal taste and opinion. So I actually think that the fact that DC is an allergy hellhole is relevant to this question about what is the best season in Washington, because there's spring, other than that, has an awful lot going for it.
Yeah, and I have to say, I've lived all over. There is nothing, I think, in terms of pollen, there's no place like DC I've ever been. You go to your car in the morning and it's just covered in yellow. I have not seen that happen to that extent in other cities. But I hear you. I also like spring. It sounds like you like it because of the weather and the flowering and all of that stuff.
DC's like a super green city. It's like a lot of trees and a lot of, not just in like the quasi-suburban parts of town, but the whole city is super green. And so that means that when there are moments like the couple weeks of April when stuff is flowering and cherry blossoms are blooming or dogwoods are blooming or whatever, it does look awful pretty.
Ooh, I go for my daily walk on 14th, and there's a little side street, Monroe, that intersects with 14th. If you look down that on a spring day, you feel like you're in Louisiana or something. It's got these beautiful flowering trees. It's like a canopy of green and pink. It really is something special that I feel like you really only get it in spring in DC for a little narrow window.
Yeah, not even all of spring. But wait, so if you are, and I get really bad allergies too, and I find them just as boring and yet life consuming as you. But if your allergies are like making you not able to be a spring gal, do you have a favorite DC season?
I do have a favorite DC season, and it is fall. I think that it's the best season in DC. I think there's something, this is going to sound strange. Cities like Minnesota or Chicago, they've had these hard, cold winters, and then when the warm weather starts, everybody feels it, everybody's into it, everybody's excited. I think DC is the reverse. I think we get these tough, muggy, nasty summers. And I think when you get that first cool, crisp day where you finally feel it's still sunny out, still pretty warm, but when you first need that jacket, when the air first gets that crispness to it, I think there's something special where there's like an introspective vibe that happens where the seasons change. People feel like they're packing away their wild, hot summertime persona and putting on their autumn girl persona, wearing a pea coat. I like that vibe. It's a vibe I really like.
Ooh, autumn awakening.
Yeah.
In terms of your classic like cliches of fall, right? You're changing leaves and colors and so on. Washington is never like, it's not like Vermont or something, or even metropolitan areas in a closer drive to Vermont. And I think like actual color of tree science will bear this out. But you're making a different point, which is that the sense of joy and relief, and we can go outside again, that some places have to, experience in spring, that fall is awesome here simply because of contrast with the seasons around it.
Yes. Oh my God. I have a lot to say about this. First of all, I have to give a shout out to my best friend, Steph, who is a very big listener of CityCast from Vermont. If she hears this, she will be like, I can't believe that there was even a conversation of comparing the fall colors, leaf peep opportunities to someplace like Vermont to DC. She would be offended by that statement. So I agree. We might not get the pretty, bold fall colors. But yeah, I think that there's a relief to being able to kick it outside. And I think that DC has the best outdoor hang vibes in fall. You can go out and drink outside without needing a sunshade, without needing to get really sweaty. And some places have my very favorite thing, fire pits, because I'm a real firebug. I love to be by fire. Can't really be by fire in the summer. You can sort of be by it in the spring. The winter, you're really pushing it because it's too cold. You have to really be, about that fire sitting life to make it work. Fall is the season where you can usually get your friends to crowd around a fire outdoors and drink a hot beverage with you, which I love. Cold War-era defectors sold secrets outside the British Embassy on Mass Ave. Allied operatives met at the Mayflower Hotel in 1925, and again in 2010. And odds are, there was a spy on your train this morning. With more than 10,000 spies, DC truly is the capital of spycraft. And if you want to understand their secrets, step into their radio transmitting shoes or into James Bond's Aston Martin, you need to visit the International Spy Museum. Located just off the National Mall, the Spy Museum features 30,000 square feet of exhibits and artifacts. They've got ciphers, submarines, and the actual ice axe that killed Leon Trotsky. While most DC museums discourage me from touching the artwork, the Spy Museum gave me an undercover identity and tested my skills as a covert operative in a series of interactive challenges. Book your visit today at spymuseum.org.
All right, so let me throw something out, which is that I think my favorite DC season is actually summer. I think it separates the hardcore from the others. And like in August when it's like there's been a thunderstorm and then it's like so hot that the steam is coming off the sidewalk. I don't know. There's something that feels, maybe it triggers some sort of nostalgia with me or something. But it seems like real. And those moments of relief, that like when I guess we're all about drinking outdoors, but when you're cracking a beer at the end of one of those days, I don't know. There's something, maybe because I grew up in DC, except for my parents were in the Foreign Service, and where we were posted when we lived overseas was always, incredibly muggy, malarial places. So maybe it all it's a nostalgia trip for me. But I'm kind of partial to summer in DC. It has no defenders.
I remember when we were talking about like our love letters to the city, that the moment that crystallized your love for DC was the feeling when you walk from a hot outdoor environment into an air-conditioned bus or something like that, like that feeling. Yeah. So this is something it's like you've really thought about this, you've really experienced this, you're really grounded in the love of that kind of feeling, that being kind of quintessential to DC.
It's my Madeleine.
I get it. I also think I've always wondered this about men who work in DC. If you have a job where you're meant to wear a suit and a jacket, how are you getting to point A to point B in the summertime in DC? I've never known.
I don't, not well, I guess. But I never had one of those jobs where I actually had to. There were days I did. But look at, the thing, and this is another argument we've had in quasi-scientific terms, is this north or south? And One of the ways seems pretty south is that like architecture, horticulture, it's all a lot of the stuff people have chosen to build or even plant, like neighborhoods with shade trees and stuff, is a concession to the southern weather. So you get a lot of sort of front porch, covered front porch culture in Washington, and screen porch culture, um, and these occasional streets with like kind of drooping shade trees. It's all meant for the weather. And then every now and then you see some old codger with like a seersucker suit or something, and either he's like a senator or a college Republican or a legit old Southerner who knows that that's the way to stay cool in the weather.
Yeah, if you're really about that staying cool life, you need like a light colored linen suit, maybe a straw hat. Y'all know I grew up in Richmond. Even though I don't believe that DC is the South, those kinds of nods to Southern charm and Southern life, I definitely see all over the city. And they do really come out in summertime. And I have a soft spot for them.
All right. There's one season we haven't discussed. Does winter have any defenders here?
No, winter is not, like, I'm not even someone who is like, ooh, I hate cold weather. I'm not a huge cold weather person, but I would rather be wintertime in a place where they really do winter than wintertime in DC. First of all, because you always get people from Minnesota or wherever who are going to complain like, oh, it snowed. People in DC can't drive in the snow. Every winter I gear up for that, of hearing my friends who are from places where it gets really cold and snowy complain about how people in DC handle the snow, which I know is not well. I know it's not well.
Right. We can all stipulate to that. I'm sort of, it gets cold enough that like you change your activities, but you never get the like upsides of that. And then you get like those rare occasions where weather does happen, everyone's really annoying about it. Both the people who can't handle it and the people who can handle it and want to let you know exactly how well they can.
Who's more annoying?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think that it's the second group. Well, I grew up in Montreal and I know better than you. Yes, okay, I stipulate we're hillbillies in the snow.
There was one, like, I forget, it was a few years ago. The weather was calling for a bad snowstorm. I remember I got the day off work, like we were able to like work from home, and the snow never materialized. And there was a picture of somebody with a shovel essentially shoveling rainwater. Like you can tell that they had got this shovel, they got the boots, and they were like, it's going to snow in DC. I'm going to make sure I'm prepared. It never snowed. So he was like, I'll just go out and shovel the rain. It's like an iconic DC weather image that is burned into my mind about how DC handles weather events.
So, all right, Miss Fall, what is your number one or the top few ways of taking advantage of that season?
I'm so glad you asked. I have so many. One, your mileage may vary on these. Like, check with your like laws in your building or whatever. This is what I do. Invest in creating a portable warming hearth that you can take to the park, take outside, and start being the person in your friend group who kickstarts a chilly weather outdoor hang. That will make you lots of friends. You will not feel sad about the cold weather coming. Like, find ways to capture the cozy. You can make it your personality. Like, my friends all say that I've made enjoying hanging out in cold weather like part of my personality. And that's a thing. So yeah, I would say invest in the cozy is the advice I would give. You can read my newsletter segment about how to build a fire in Rock Creek Park, which is always fun. Yeah, just keep it cozy.
I think if you want to kill summer in DC, I think it's weird. I don't actually even like crabs to eat, but the ritual of like getting a crab feast and like they'll spread it out on newspapers and it comes with cold beer and stuff, that's kind of fun. The crabs are like the least interesting part about it to me, but that always says, summer to me. And usually because I associate with August, which is like kind of the interns have gone home and like only the hardcore are left.
Oh, don't make fun of me. I'm gonna have to give up my Mid-Atlantic girl card. But when I was a kid, had a crab, like a newspaper crab night, and I touched my eyes and I had Old Bay on my hands and it got in my eyes and I had a tantrum. And so my mom was like, I'll just crack the crabs for you and give you meat. And so to this day, I expect when I eat crabs that like someone has to just give me little piles of meat. And that's how I do it. It's very embarrassing as someone who is from the Mid-Atlantic region.
I mean, yes, it is. Yes, it is. But I think the most annoying part of a crab event is that there's always someone who knows really, really well how to do it, and is then gonna like tutor you. And it's sort of like the Minnesotan in the snow. They're gonna let you
Yeah.
know just how inept you are.
Yeah. And also,
And
I don't want to be taught. I'm happy not knowing how to do it.
oh, it's epical. I mean, I think the thing of crabs is the work to like nutrient ratio is like really out of whack. But the ritual of that just, I don't know. That's the thing that always has summer in DC to me.
Oh, well, I can't wait to continue this discussion over some crabs and a cold beer this summer.
Or around a fire pit next fall.
Fantastic. Before you go, here's some quick news. The Fairfax grand jury declined to indict the Fairfax police officer who shot and killed Timothy McCree Johnson, an unarmed black man suspected of shoplifting at Tyson's Corner. After the shooting in February, prosecutors wanted Sergeant Wesley Shiflett charged with manslaughter, but it was rejected. The grand jury hasn't given an explanation. Shiflett was fired but will face no legal action. Meanwhile, you've probably heard that Dan Snyder is likely about to sell the Washington Commanders. But where will they play? Some Loudoun County board members want to see the new stadium built there, at the Chantilly Crushed Stone Quarry property near the border with Fairfax County. They say they will not raise taxes if chosen as the stadium site. And lastly, there are more metro closings coming this summer. The orange, silver, and green lines will all have major construction projects going on, with the orange line's work starting May 12th. There will be free shuttle buses to ferry passengers between closed stations. Today's DC life hack is, it's baseball season, but Nats Park can be expensive. So here's a tip. Bring a sealed water bottle and food into the stadium with you. Save that cash and eat better food, too. Alcohol, not so much, so don't try it. That's all for today here on CityCast DC. And we want to know, what season do you love or love to hate in DC? Let us know by leaving us a voicemail at 202-642-2654. And share this episode with your friend who loves DC winters because, honestly, we would love to hear a defender of that. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you then.
My wife bought me a pair of like linen white pants, and it was like one dinner before they were like stained with stuff.
You were eating blueberry pie and red wine.
Right.
A ketchup popsicle.